let's kick it off. We'll have folks join as they can, and the session's getting recorded, so everyone's going to benefit from this session, even if they're not able to join on time. So yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the pre-hackathon introduction and product walkthrough. I am Adhi. We also have Jamie on the call here today. We're both super excited to be hosting the upcoming hackathon next week, and look forward to seeing you all in our New York office. So as a quick introduction on what Jamie and I do here at Kizen, I lead our ecosystem engineering team, and Jamie leads our solution engineering team. Also on the call with us is Jeremy. He's our FDE who will be showing us how to build a workflow in Kizen using a real-world use case, and also give you a taste of how our CLI builder and Anthropic Claude could be a very powerful combo. Quick intro or taste of Kizen. So here at Kizen, we strongly believe that technology should be in service of people. We started our company to deliver on the promise of AI by building intelligent AI assistants, and of course, an agentic orchestration system to support your business, as well as your teams to reach your greatest potential. With that being said, I'll hand it off to Jamie to kind of double click on what agentic orchestration means and where Kizen kind of like shines in that area.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. To Adhi's point, I'm Jamie Signorile, I'm the VP Solutions here at Kizen. My team's really responsible for building and commercializing a lot of the AI solutions that we deploy into highly regulated industries, right? So when we think about the agentic orchestration platform and the work that we do here at Kizen, we really look to partner with enterprise clients within insurance, healthcare, financial services to really understand and diagnose pain points in their existing operational workflows and see where we can practically implement AI. So the combination of our go-to-market motion and the folks that are working with these enterprise clients being very consultative, combining that with our agentic orchestration platform to really drive ROI and results for our clients. You could really think of the agentic OS as essentially like a central nervous system, right? So a system that connects your people, your processes, your various platforms in real time, right? So it's an orchestration layer that's able to connect to your existing business applications and systems of record, and it enables you to automate key operational workflows. And a big part of that, and what Jeremy's going to walk through, are some key foundational components that allow you to essentially implement LLMs and reasoning into these workflows to drive ROI. So, three key components of the agentic OS. So first and foremost, data is the foundation, right? I've seen the list of registrants so far here. A lot of folks who are already experimenting with AI practically, right? Data and context is important. It's key. So the first thing our platform enables is the ability to aggregate information, data from various systems and bring it all together so you can leverage it in context for your workflows. It's a key piece. The second is our multi-agent orchestration layer. So this is where you'll see Jeremy actually go in and drag and drop and build entire workflows using our core primitives in order to automate and introduce LLMs into the workflow. And then finally, what's really important, as we all know, when we deploy into the enterprise, is observability and decision trees. So being able to govern and observe agents and agentic workflows that you build, right? So seeing every step of the way what happened, what was executed is important, as well as having a human in the loop component. So being able to, as you build out workflows, have humans step in, review the work of agents, right? Approve or deny certain things, make corrections, et cetera. And it's a super important point as you think about building these closed loop systems that compound over time. And then finally, as we think about that governance piece, Kizen is highly compliant from an enterprise standpoint when it comes to top tier security, access control, right? We're SOC compliant, HIPAA compliant, et cetera. So, the platform really has these core components that are going to allow you to build some really interesting things, and we can't wait to see it later next week. So with that being said, I'll pass it to Jeremy. He's going to walk through a quick demonstration. Hope you all enjoy it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. My name is Jeremy Bedient. I'm a solutions engineer here at Kizen. I work on Jamie's team, and I work with a lot of our customers. And I probably spend more time in Kizen than just about anyone else. So really happy to get to walk you through the platform and share a little bit about how I like to think about building with with Kizen. I think it's really flexible. It gives us lots of options for the ways that we can do things, and so I think you all will have a lot of fun with it. I want to start off and just sort of frame what it is that I want to show, because I didn't want to start with a blank environment and start building from scratch. I wanted to pull in one of the sort of demo environments that we already have pre-built. And this is really a fraud use case. So we're talking about insurance, and insurance carriers have all these brokers. Brokers are selling policies to members. And so the carrier is really interested in what are the signs that one of my brokers might be committing fraud and therefore costing me money and being a regulatory risk. And what this does is, in our scenario, we're pulling in member information from a CRM, we're pulling in enrollments from your enrollment management system, we're pulling in the broker information from databases like Nipper and others, in order to bring the data into one place. And then what we're doing is we're going to operate some workflows over it. We're going to provide some deterministic checks and some LLM-based checks to flag where do we see risk, and then really how do we interpret all of these signals, right? There's so much that goes on where we can just give a bunch of numbers, but numbers aren't necessarily always interpretable, or they require a lot of effort to understand what's going on. And so then trying to figure out what's my next best action, what should I be focused on as my sort of next steps. And that's where we get that human in the loop, and trying to build in systems where people are always involved, but they're being empowered through the solutions we're building. So we'll do that, and then we'll show a little bit about how Claude and other coding agents can be supporting us. So let me share my screen. Going to pull up this screen. Perfect. So this is one of our highly configurable Kaizen homepages. It's giving just some high-level overviews of some key statistics about sort of this fraud use case, and then we have a whole bunch of what we call in Kaizen activities that are being assigned to me as the person managing this sort of compliance effort to review. These activities super configurable, and they really play into a lot of the rest of our platform. And so I'll just click into complete one of these, and this can help us understand some of the different components, and then we'll get into how we actually build some of this. So in this case, we're able to associate these activities to different records. So a risk signal and a broker. We're able to have a risk score, some risk summary that's been developed by an LLM. Same thing with flagging some areas for investigation, and then opportunities to provide feedback based on what the LLM is coming up with. We think that this is an important component in most workflows today. You get into this idea of that self-learning loop, right? How can we measure how good is the output of AI? How much are people taking it into account? And then tailoring things over time to improve them, and really leverage the customer's data to continuously improve over time. I mean, that's pretty much why our company is called Kaizen. There's that idea of continuous improvement. So I'll click out here and show a little bit about just how we can be building these sorts of things. I'll click into our members object here at the top, and Kaizen is really the foundation always comes down to data. And so we can create really any sort of object that we want. If I come back to objects in this environment, we've got tons of different objects. I can create an object to represent really anything that I want. And then as we're defining that object, what we can do is set really a number of things. If I click into object settings, I can choose how do I want to display the name of my object? How do I want to filter? Does it have some kind of workflow component to it? Do I want to track a dollar value against it? Lots of sort of these high level things. we can come in here and define different stages. This actually gets really good when it comes to orchestrating sort of processes that we want an agent to follow, because we can kick off some new workflow at each of these different stages to track it all the way to completion. Send things back and forth to one another to then trigger other things. So these end up being a really powerful way for us to orchestrate sort of the completion of a task. We can also come in here and define relationships. Kaizen has a really flexible relational data model that you can define out of the box, right? I don't need to go and define the junction table to make a many-to-many relationship, right? I can just select many-to-many, and Kaizen handles the rest. And then we can define fields. Kaizen's got all sorts of different field types, right? Just put in a name, define the type, we can select files, drop-down options, all those sorts of things in order to really customize the data model however you see fit. I think another thing that's worth calling out here, we're able to obviously customize our layout, right? The record, the board view itself, but then for that enterprise grade capability that Kaizen's bringing to the table, we have really granular role-based action controls, access controls, and you can come in here and get down to the field level on what it is you want people to be able to view, edit, and work with at the record level, and then at the even individual field level. So that's what makes Kaizen so kind of ready to handle these enterprise workflows, is that all of this is kind of a core component of what we offer. I'll also call out, for those of you who want to kind of interact a little bit more programmatically with Kaizen, if I come here, I can view sort of customized API documentation in our Swagger page around how I can interact with this object in particular. And so all of our API documentation is available on our developer docs, which I'm sure has been sent to you already. But really, we try to be developer friendly, and we want to make sure that integrating with Kaizen is really easy. It's clear to figure out how can I create a record and have another system send me information. The next thing I want to get into is the agentic workflows, right? How are we actually leveraging AI, and how are we kind of orchestrating all these different processes that go on within an enterprise? And so I'm going to start off with my fraud monitoring use case and come to this broker fraud risk check. And so if I open up my workflow, I'll zoom in. We can define what are the things that trigger my workflow. So this might be one of those activities logging. So if I marked that broker, the risk check as complete, that could kick off an activity. If I change the stage of my record, that can kick off an automation. If we are creating a new record, changing a field, having a date, or even receiving a webhook from an external system, like lots of different ways that we can be starting any of these processes. We can even start them from each other, meaning that one workflow can kick off a cascade of other interrelated processes. Kaizen's able to define the typical things, actions, conditions, and then we'll get into the AI component in a moment. But anything that you could probably need to do between our out-of-the-box actions, right? Starting another workflow, changing a field, making or modifying entities, pulling records into a variable. All of these things, even text and email and external requests, all those things come out the box without any code needed. But if there are things that you find, I just can't do it with one of those, Kaizen's got really great capabilities to inject Python code steps. And so we can define what are the inputs that we're bringing in, what might be secrets if we're working with external systems, and then where do we want to output some of this information. So in this case, I'm trying to go through and aggregate a bunch of information as context to provide to the agent. So we do some deterministic checks, right? If my percentage of high submission volume is more than 20, great. Then we're going to move it along and say that this is worth assessing for risk. We can then bring in our AI agent And this is where we can go, define whichever models we want to be working with. We're able to merge in information that might be coming from, from the information that we've curated for the agent. And really what I think about here is for most tasks that are going on within large enterprises, we already know the information that it makes sense to give to the agent. And so it doesn't make sense to give it the sort of large open-ended kind of autonomous coding agent that I think a lot of us are probably familiar with, because it's inefficient, right? If why make it search for the information when we already know the information that it needs to be given and can really collect that context for it up front. That way we know what it's working with. So these are some of the things that we think about as we're designing these processes. And then this is another thing we can merge in, right? That self-learning. As we are aggregating some of those insights from people saying that these recommendations are helpful or not, we can append those into our prompt and use those to improve the output that we have over time. And then we can output to various parts of the system and work through downstream actions. I think the last thing worth calling out here is if we come and look at executions. This is where we can come in and get step level execution history. So understanding exactly what went on. So if I start with that Python step, we can see, hey, these were all of the inputs to the step, the outputs, every API call and the details of it. So you can really get down to a pretty granular level as you're trying to work through these things. And then same with the LLM steps. You can see the exact prompt that they were given with those merged fields put in. And then you can see exactly the summary, the value, the rationale, confidence, all these sorts of things, really giving us more insight into what was the agent trying to do when it was completing this task. So now what I want to do is I want to show you a little bit how we can continue to build on top of this. So I think that a great output from this wouldn't be just to create a risk signal to say, hey, we think that there might be risk, but I actually think it would be helpful to go in and trigger an investigation. So I've got my terminal up here with Claude Code, and using Kaizen's CLI, Claude is able to understand and interact with our Kaizen environment. And so I'm just going to ask it quickly, hey, tell me a little bit about this Kaizen instance. And so it's going to run through, check my prompt. It's able to execute commands against our environment. And so it can understand exactly what is it that I'm working with here. We've got built-in documentation. That way, the agent's always able to find the information that it needs to build these things. What I think is really valuable here is, we have all these workflows that exist in a business, and a lot of them happen so repetitively. And building those workflows and putting them into a system today just takes a lot of time to do manually, or to really get an IT team's buy-in to execute on. So in this case, we can see it's gone through, it's found all the objects that I have, some of the automations that we've built, some dashboards that we have. So it gave me just a brief summary. I'm going to kick it off and can you create an investigations object with pipeline values for new, in progress, and done? Also make it relate to a broker and a risk signal. So we're going to let it kind of work through this. But what I think this really enables us to do is build out real workflows that are ready for scale, that are auditable, that have access controls, that are built to handle millions upon millions of executions, that the kind of techie person at our customers might be building in a spreadsheet. Right, the person we've all met the person, some of us are the person who's building that like VBA macro to automate something, or you have adopted some kind of AI coding tool into your workflow. And that works great sort of at the independent level, but this helps build those processes, but make them scalable. So right now, Claude's coming through. It's reading information about the environment. It's making sure it knows what fields, how to identify any of these different objects across the system. And we've really built this CLI with both people and agents in mind. So every single command can go to the sort of standard JSON that the agent might be looking for, but also output in a tabular form that you or I might be able to see. It makes it so that it's useful no matter who the audience is. We also always make sure that our agents are kind of doing a dry run, trying to basically run it through our planner anytime it's going to create something to validate and make sure that it's actually the thing that we want it to. So in this case, it's coming through here and it's telling me it's going to create the object. It's going to rename the initial kind of stage 1 that comes up as new. It's going to add a couple additional stages, make a category of fields, and then define these 2 relationship fields. And so I'm going to say good to go. And now it's actually able to execute on my behalf. And so I will let it create this object while I navigate over to our list of objects. We can see right here, right, we've got nothing for an investigation. So if I refresh my page, we can see now we've got the investigations object created, and Claude's just going to keep going through here and getting everything built out. So let's let it finish putting together the plan. And once it's got these categories and things together, we'll be able to go take a look at the object and confirm that it's actually done the thing that we've asked it for. And this is really for the sake of a quick example, but we're able to build workflows. We're able to build some of our ETL pipelines. We can test some of the code, the Python code steps, in a remote sandbox. So lots of capabilities to help you accelerate the development of a workflow in Kaizen. We never want to be limited by me going around and clicking add field a dozen times. It works, right? It absolutely goes and enables us to move these workflows forward, but this accelerates us. We're able to take in all of this business context and leverage any AI agent, right? It's not just Claude Code, it's Codex or any other. And you can go through and really leverage this to build those reusable workflows that are able to integrate AI more seamlessly into the enterprise. So it's finishing up making some of these stages, and then it'll go and make those relationships. But I hope that this is at least illustrative of some of the capabilities that we have that we can go in and with simple commands like Kaizen objects, stages create, and it tells us exactly what it is that we want. So we've given it sort of the language that it can interact with our system rather than just trying to write Python every time to try to call our API, fumble through the schema. We've made it as easy as possible for anyone to be interacting with Kaizen programmatically. And so with only just a couple minutes left, I'll let this finish up and then pass it back to Adhi to close us out. Let's see if it can finish up quickly. Well, if I even just click in here, object settings. So we've got our stages for sure. And hopefully it's almost done making our fields. It's got our broker in here, edit options. We've got relationships. We can define how everything needs to work. So our agent was able to go in and complete the task really smoothly and then go check its work. So helps iterate faster when trying to build out these workflows. And we'll be around next week if there are any questions or ways that we can be supporting. And this is all available, and hopefully you all have been sent the information. So I'll pass it back to Adhi to close us out.
Yep. Thanks, Jeremy. So yeah, hopefully this was a good taste of what's possible in our platform. Not just directly from our UI, but also our CLI builder, and like I mentioned earlier, the combo of Claude and Kaizen CLI, can come up with some really, really creative solutions. So looking forward to what you guys can build. So thank you all for joining us today. We can't wait to see what all of you come up with, what you build. And like Jeremy mentioned, we're there to support you, collaborate with you during the day, on the day off, during your session. Quick reminder: don't forget to join our community Slack that we have sent as part of the welcome email. So if you want to ask questions to your fellow hackers or one of us, feel free to start digging in, probing, asking questions, and we're here to help. And I think some of you were curious how prepared you can come. So feel free to bring your own information, prompts, docs, to give yourself a head start. It's all fair game. It's mostly about, with the information that you have today, how can you leverage Kaizen to come up with something phenomenal. So yeah, looking forward to having you all in the office soon, and hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Excellent.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.